back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm doing a general update video, which is not something I've been doing. Actually, I've never done it. What I have done is small update videos on specific areas or industries or certain projects. The only other thing I have done is an update in sequence, meaning it's like in parts. And the reason I did that was because I was way far into the building process before I started making any kind of YouTube videos. So I had to kind of catch up, but I didn't want the videos to be like, 5 hours long. So I had to go one part at a time. That's still in work in progress. And I've gotten pretty far into the layout with that. So if you want to see more detailed, information about every one of my sections here, go ahead and check out that playlist, and it has all of those videos, under it. So before I get started with this general update, and I figured I'd start here because this is my most current section that I've been working on. I want to say one thing, and that is that when you have a lot of progress in your layout and you have a small room, you tend to run out of room to put things that you need in order to make these scenes possible. So tools, paints, plaster, ballast, all the stuff you need to create one of these things right here, one of these small sections, basically create chaos around your layout room. And like I said, especially when you don't have a lot of room to work with. So I am sort of apologizing for the mess that you're about to see around the layout, but I got to put this stuff somewhere, and it's either on the floor, or it's shoved in a corner, or it's on top of the layout, or it's in the one little corner that I haven't started any work on. You'll see, for example, right there. Look at that. Everything's right there. Not good. But I have nowhere to go right now, so some things just need to be placed, within reach for me so that I can work efficiently. Once I get further into the scenery process, and I'm getting pretty close to being done now, then I'll be able to put a lot of that stuff away and just clean up. I don't like to be disorganized, but right now I don't have a choice. Anyways, so I'm going to do this video just, like I said, generally. And if you want to see any more, just check out my channel and you'll see it there. All right, so I'm going to start in the most boring area, which is my lift-out bridge. This lift-out bridge basically connects the closet, which is right here, to the shower, which is right there. And if this is the first video you're watching about my layout, don't worry, there's a reason why it's going through the shower. You just have to go find that video on my YouTube channel, and it'll have a lot more information about that. Here's what I did with the lift out. Again, generally speaking, there's a triple line that goes through here. One's supposed to be the short line, and these are the main lines. But I wanted to keep them fairly simple all the way through, because since you're going through closet and all these tight spaces and stuff, I didn't want any crossovers or a lot of turnouts in there and stuff like that. So I kept it as simple as possible, and I also included re-railers for two reasons. One for alignment purposes, and the other one for in case something gets a little bit warped or off kilter, it'll help re-rail the cars in case they do jump a little bit. But I've had this layout for a while now, probably I think it was 2 years in March, and nothing really major has happened. Little things here and there, but nothing major. This scenery that I put in front of it, I just put here because it was boring to just see this just 3 tracks going through there. So I did it in a way that you can detach it. And again, there's another video about that, but this allows me to put it away when I'm not using it. And the only thing I have left to do here is just some kind of background, which also protects the trains from falling off the other side. Obviously, the scenery protects it from this side. Not that it's going to happen, but you never know. But yeah, I'm planning on putting either some sky or a photo backdrop there or something to do that. So I'm going to make my way this way. So once we go through the shower, what we're getting into is the port scene. And this is just a photo backdrop, some you know, water made from Mod Podge gloss and just simple olive green paint, but I think that came out pretty neat. It's dusty right now. I still have to, you know, shine it up a little bit, take all that stuff off. But generally speaking, it came out really nice. And this is where the triple tracks come out of. And then at that point, you do have your crossovers, anything that was necessary to go from track to track. So let me just show you a general, let's see if I can get back far enough, general image of what the port scene looks like. Originally, it didn't have this entire wedge here. It was just going like this and like that. And I was going to put the fascia board just like that. And this wasn't here either. But what I decided to do is add this oil tanker here. It's a small one, but still looks big enough for my layout. But what ended up happening was that it looked kind of weird with the nose sticking out here, with this front part. So I built this wedge that also comes out. I just built it as an add-on. But you know, I mean, you can see the seams, but not really. It's kind of hidden, masked on there. And what I did when I built this, I made it. This is like a thin piece of plastic that I overlapped. So when you see it this way, you can't really tell. I mean, you can tell a little bit, but it's not that obvious. The other thing about my port scene, besides the oil tanker, is that I also have a ferry system in order to get the trains from the lower level to the upper level. This is my ferry up here. As I kick a can of spray paint because it's a mess up here. Again, more about this, but generally what's happening is it's going through the benchwork and down into here using an elevator system, which is actually this thing right here. If you get close, you kind of see the outline. But that whole little platform comes up automatically using a linear actuator, which I control here, up and down. It's just not plugged in right now. And that allows me to get the trains up and down. I can stick about 35 cars in here because it is a multi-level. It's got 2 decks, so it's basically the same thing on both decks. The ship does have smoke makers on these stacks, and the only thing is I have to connect it, but they do work and they do put out smoke. I just don't like to run it too much because it stinks when you run it too much, and I don't want to get intoxicated. Anyways, going back to the port scene. Sorry about the shakiness, but that's what it's going to have to be. The port scene is basic. Otherwise, it's got just a transfer shed type building. It's got some tracks for loading, unloading. It's got some holding tracks back there, just 2 of them that go, you know, behind the shed. And then just basically all the necessary trackage to get the 4 tracks that you need to get on the ferry. The way I get the trains from the lower level to the upper level and vice versa is through this apron, which again, there's more information about that, but they are motorized and they are controlled through more of these toggle switches here. I have 2 of them obviously because I have 2 levels. One's there, this is complete, and one's here. This is incomplete, but it'll look pretty much the same as that one. But the nice thing about that is that I have slow motion motors, which actually they're the ones right there. And so you can control it to a very small amount of distance. So it allows you to, you know, make things very accurate without overshooting too much or, you know, stuff like that. So that's that. Then the tank cars, you know, there's 2 tracks here for loading, unloading, and holding for the tanks. It's supposed to be, you know, oil, and the big holding tanks are over there. So eventually I'd have to put some kind of pipe work that connects somehow there. But I did build a pit for the oil tanks. The only thing is that after I did a little research and I saw that, you know, they build these walls up so in case there's a spill, you know, it retains the oil in there. I was like, well, you need somehow to get in there. So I left a little gap here for, you know, for access. But then I'm like, duh, the oil's going to come out through there. So Then I realized that none of these pits have any kind of break in the wall. What they do have is a stair, kind of like it's like the stairs go up and there's a platform and the stairs go down for access. So that was silly, but that's an easy fix. I just gotta build up the wall there and it'll be fine. Okay, moving on. The main lines, which are the two back ones, continue through and around into the other side of the peninsula. The short line, which is what I use for all the work here, this way I don't interrupt, you know, the unit trains and things that are running on the main line. That short line goes through this tunnel, which I had to finish the portal and all that stuff, and under through this mountain under here, and it spits out right there. We'll talk more about these tracks, but it's basically a pretzel. And what's happening is it's the same main lines as here, but they go around the peninsula all the way around on the other side and then come back up this way. And that's where the overlap is, right there. So let's go back to the short line. Short line ducks under here. I like this scene. This came out really nice. The idea is that this entire wing is kind of like, you know, in the middle of nowhere kind of a situation with some abandoned things, and, you know, it's supposed to feel like very distant as much as possible anyway. So any pictures I take here, or any footage that I shoot from here, you know, once I get all the trees up and everything, it'll look, you know, like a wooded area, kind of like, you know, out in the countryside. So things I did here, I tried to weather this track because I figure, I don't know, I think short lines get less maintenance than the main line. So I put a little rust and a little oil stain, and, you know, I just kind of weathered it a little bit more than I did with the main track or the main line. Although I think I might go back and do a little weathering, but I wanted to differentiate between, you know, both lines. I also built this abandoned spur here. So what I imagine is that there was some kind of a turnout here that eventually led to this small loading platform, but now it's abandoned. So you know, I have the overgrown grass, I have the rusty rails, I have the you know, abandoned flat car there, an abandoned truck with a twisted wheel to make it look like it's broken and just left there. I weathered it like crazy. A little shed there, stop sign for the end of the track, you know, so on and so forth. I thought that came out pretty good. I'm still not done with the fencing and stuff. I don't even know that I like this fence because it's like squares rather than like the diamond shape, but for now it's good enough. Going on through our short line, this is an abandoned shed, which I know it's too close to the track. I keep getting that. Yes, you're right, but I went to Pennsylvania about 2 summers ago, and I saw a house that was literally on top of the tracks. It was like the locomotive was almost kissing the corner of the house. So that's my prototypical excuse of building a house, even though it's abandoned, that close to the tracks. So I have some overgrown grass and, I don't know, maybe some crops and things that were back there. The car is abandoned, there's holes and all kinds of things there. So that's that. I don't know. If I don't like it in the future, I'll just pop it off and just put a bunch of trees in there. Going on. Okay. This is where the entire layout basically started. This was like my first ever concept that I imagined before I put a screw to a 2x4. You know, nothing was done, but I already had this in my head. On my previous layouts, which were fairly small, I already had these bridges available to me because I used them on those layouts. But I love this bridge here. I forget what company makes them. I think it's Haljan. It's like a European model. And I said, what if I made it where the two, you know, nice looking bridges are back to back here with a split creek or river type thing, and then I had the other bridge up higher to kind of give it a nice display, a nice presentation. And that's exactly what I came up with, and I'm very happy with how this came out. The only thing was that when I was building this, I said, well, how hard can it be to find a second one of these things? Well, it was extremely hard because apparently nobody makes them anymore. And luckily I was able to find this one on eBay after searching for months and months and months. And it was definitely made in, like, I would say the 50s, because the packaging was so old and so yellow that when I got it, I was like, oh boy. I mean, it's plastic, so it's not gonna break or anything. But I did notice that it was very brittle, like compared to this one. Like this one, you can kind of, the plastic is more gummy, it's more bendable. But this one, as soon as I would touch it, it felt like it wanted to break. Very, very brittle. So maybe they just changed the plastic that they were building this with. But I was lucky to be able to get it and place it in the scene here. But the funny thing is, going back, is that I had already built the channels. I had already built the scenery around it, and I just left the space. I took this bridge and I put it there, and I was like, all right, when I get the bridge, it'll just plop in. So I was kind of stuck, and if I didn't find one of those, it would have been a little bit silly, because I would have had to put some other bridge there. Not that that's terrible, but anyways. So yeah, and the water right now is super dirty. I have dust and all kinds of debris that fell from the upper level, because I've been working mostly on the upper level. And so I apologize for that, but it does come right off. And I will be putting water effects here, because it's kind of unrealistic that these things would be glass the entire time. So this is just, initial setting, and I'll go back and do more. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to show you, which I'm excited about, is that background picture there, which is literally just right off the internet. That's just regular paper, nothing fancy. I glued it back there, and I noticed that the color of the water was very close to the color of my water. So what I did is I tried to match the boulders that you see back there to some rocks that I have in my backyard, and I just added those. So I think once I add the water effects and stuff like that, they won't look like they're just sitting on top. But I just, generally speaking, it kind of blends in nicely with the background. So I'm very happy with how that came out as well. All right, let's move on. So as we go through the short line, continue, it basically just goes past all the industries that we have here, and it goes around the island, and then it connects to the main line. But before I get to that, let me just explain what's going on here. This was the second project I came up with, and I always wanted some kind of like lumber facility, and I already had this structure with the office, so I wanted to put it somewhere. And originally I was going to just have the spur go down into like a valley, and this is supposed to be just dirt. I wasn't even going to have that mountain there, but then I got creative, and I was also doing research online and stuff, and I saw these triple bridges in one of the facilities that I was checking out. And so I liked it so much that I was like, what if I did that? What if I had a creek that kind of wrapped around the lumber facility, which, now that I think of it, if you had lumber floating through, like logs and stuff, or trees, that would eventually go in there. In the old days, that's how they used to do it. They used to just float them and then just bring them into the mill, and that's how they would, turn them into lumber. So that's what I went with. And I'm not done with this, obviously, because I still have to get all the ground cover here and here. But basically what's happening here is that I have the main lumber house, which it's detailed inside too, but you can see videos on that as well. And then I scratch built this wood chip loader, because I did not know anything about wood chips until I started building this layout. And I kind of like the whole concept. So, the track under the wood chip loader is for loading and unloading, obviously, and then this one next to it is for holding the empties or switching out the fulls, until the main train gets ready to pick them up. See, this is what I'm talking about. I just had to put stuff somewhere because I have no room, so that was the easiest place I could find that I could still reach. I'm messing around with these backdrop photos of buildings. I don't know. That's probably too industrial and too we're in the middle of nowhere here, so these buildings don't really match that. They're too big, so that's probably gonna go away, and I'll probably put something smaller there, or I'll just paint background trees and things like that back there. This is also a video on my YouTube channel you can check out. And the nice thing about this is that everything is controlled from this little panel, which I motorized so that it comes out and it's not in the way of the hallway. So that's kind of cool. It's got the map of basically all of these turnouts, and so it's nice because I don't have to I don't have to reach in there and knock things over and things like that. Eventually, there's going to be other stuff there, so I could just control it all from here, and that's kind of cool. And then when I'm done working on this facility, it just goes away. And the nice thing is that it stops on its own, so I don't even have to think about it. It'll just stop. Okay, moving on. Short line comes through here. The mountain was basically put there for a seam break, because I didn't want you to be able to see what's on the other side and vice versa. So that's why I did that. The only thing I didn't like, because it's like one of my first mountains that I ever built, was that it's got like a tabletop up here. And I like the boulders and all that stuff. That came out good. But what I might do is just kind of lift it with plaster or whatever, and just to make it look a little bit more round, because that's kind of, it's very unrealistic that just drops off exactly at the same level throughout the whole thing. So I'll probably just modify it a little bit, but it's my first one, so not bad. I'm trying to just focus here. Okay, so the short line here now attaches itself to the main lines. And the main lines, which were a double line, come down to one line. And then the reason why they attach here is because I wanted to make it interesting for myself, where the main line has to, in order to get through this tunnel, it has to turn into a main line. And the reason I'm saying interesting is because now when I run trains, I want to have the challenge of figuring out what the priority train is. And also, if I have some kind of operation session, I would need to get permission to see which train is going to go through at a specific point, depending on where they're going, and all that stuff. So I'm getting into operations little by little and understanding more about them, but I wanted to make sure that I had the option before I got into it fully. Okay, moving on. This is short line and main lines. They spit out of the tunnel. This is a paint facility, which I basically imagined that it was originally this building, which I think most people have if you're in N-scale. So that's to cover all paints, typical Walters Cornerstone kit. And then what I imagine is that it expanded. It got, bigger and more popular. And then you needed, transfer buildings for the trucks and all that stuff, and another building back there. And then here, the reason I did this is because I like the split in the road between the facilities. So I saw that a few times, and I just like the way that whole thing goes down. But basically, the spur allows you access to that building, the holding track, and then also any building, any tank cars that would go on here and box cars that would go there. And what's neat about it is that the crossing gates are on either end. So I was able to place them so that they block this whole area here, and hopefully nobody jumps them. But I got a cop here waiting anyway in case somebody does. And they also work because I have the actual what do you call this thing? I have the sensor. That's the word. I have it there. Now, I don't know why it's not reacting right now. I think, oh, there it goes. Yeah, so basically, as long as I interrupt the sensor here, it'll bring the gates down. And these are cool because, again, there's another video on how these work, but they basically stop as soon as you pass them, and not the long-term sensors, which are placed further back, because you need the long ones in order to get past the crossing. And then once the caboose or whatever the last car is passes that, it lifts, very quickly. It lifts the gates up. So that's that. The other thing I did here in this industry, which I'm happy with, is that I I made these manual gates. So if you take a look at this gate here, they actually move. That one. And this one here. And they're manual, so I can move them at any speed that I want. And that's kind of cool. It just adds another layer of operation to that. And what I did in order to make that work is I added these, I scratch built these cranks out of like spurs, not spurs, what are they called? I forget. The thing that comes when you build a kit, you know, the things that holds the plastic parts together. And you know, this one's missing the cover, but it's basically going to be this over here as well. But this is just to protect it from somebody like brushing into it and snapping it off. And this is just a tin can for mints that I just took and painted black. I have to touch it up. But yeah, so as you spin these, you basically, you're moving the gate. So that's kind of cool. Oh, just a side note, I've been putting lights on basically every building. So LEDs over the doors and windows inside, and you know, the more modern ones here because it's a more modern building. So I've been just messing with different colors and things like that. On this side of the industry, I basically made these gates just to kind of block passengers and things and whatever. Anybody that would be, not passengers, pedestrians. Anybody that would be walking around, you know, kind of like stops them from going in there. If that's not realistic, oh well, but it is in my situation here, in my layout. That's pretty much it. You know, that back holding tank, I built from a PVC cap, and then I just took a ladder or a staircase and just cut the one side to let it bend, and then I just glued it on. It was a pain in the butt, but I got it done somehow. Obviously, things are missing still. I got to finish the fencing, you know, more details. I got to add trees back here. You can still see like a hole there from the plaster and all that stuff, but it's coming along nicely. So this quiet road just kind of comes around. I'm going to have a gas station here, so I got to just build up the plaster and make it, you know, look more presentable. The you know, town station is going to be right here. And there's going to be a parking lot here. I made these what do you call these, railings, you know, highway kind of things, just to block here. But these are scratch built, so happy with that also. Okay, then the road connects here with the road that crosses into the town. Originally I made this whole town look like the famous Saluda, the town of Saluda, which is what I was going to make my layout all about, but I decided not to, because then I was very limited on just that era, and just, you know, I wanted to have more options. So these gates also work the same way as the other ones. Oh, so let me just back up a little bit. So, you know, this is the main. Here's where it opens up again into the double main. And it goes basically through all the way to the Y over there. I made this overpass here, just like in the town of Saluda. So everything you see here is basically taken from a GPS photo, like a Google Earth photo that I saw, and I was able to kind of get the angle right and all that stuff. Okay, now this area here is my Y, and the Y is what allows me to turn, you know, the trains around, obviously, or change directions. You know, it just gives you options to do whatever you want as far as running. But basically, the main lines go that way, and this is where the short line starts up again. So, you know, the short line basically shares this entire track until it gets past the tunnel, then it opens up again. Which, again, allows me to make things more interesting, because the short line local train would have to stop here and ask permission to continue while the main line trains are going through. This is the connection from this side of the layout to the mains. So that obviously hooks up to this inside main here, and continues to the back where you saw the port and all that stuff. That exit point right there is where the overpass, the overlapping section happened with the double main. So that's where it spits out, and it continues through. This track here is basically my yard lead, and I wanted to make it super long so that I can get a very long train in there before I start backing into the ladder, shoving cars back into the classifying ladder here, and tracks. And this is where the Y exit point is, or entrance point happens. I have a little service road here for the yard, which is what's coming up next. And the double main lines continue all the way through. Now there is a grade, obviously, because I got to get it back down in order for it to go under on the other end. But I'm going to, before I get into the yard, let me just tell you about this little industry I have here. This is supposed to be a brewery, a simple local brewery that accepts like a hopper car and like a tank car or like a box car or whatever. And you know, I want it to be simple on purpose. So it's just a single track spur. There's a little, you know, area for the trucks to load or unload in the back, and you know that's where the spur basically splits off. And but what I like the best is the background and how that came out really nice. And you know, I mean, the photos that I've taken here are really outstanding because it looks like it goes so much further out if you take a look from this angle. So I'm happy with the way that came out, because I was worried that since I had this weird angle here that it was going to look stupid when I took a picture from here. But what I did is I stuck that pine tree in the corner, and it kind of rounds out, you know, it doesn't let you see the seam or the breaking point of the background. And I'm also going to add maybe like one here and one there just to make it even more round. So that'll be cool once I'm done with that. Okay, let's get back into the yard. There's a lot of videos on my channel about this area because there's so much to talk about here. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you an overview. Basically what's happening is this is the engine facility, even though that's not the way Walters created it. This is supposed to be a car facility, but I already had it, so that's what I'm using, and it fits better than the locomotive facility that they sell. It's got that extra extension on it. It just wouldn't fit. So that's that. These are the two fueling and sanding tracks. These are obviously the tracks that go into the facility. I also added lights and details inside the facility, but you know, again, check it out on the other YouTube videos. This is the locomotive parking, basically. So I made them kind of long because I do run, you know, 4, 5, 6 locomotive consists, and I didn't want to have to break them all up every time I wanted to park them in there. So that's kind of cool. And as I add more locomotives, I'll have room to put them there. These two right here. Sorry, these two right here are my arrival departure tracks, and the inside the arrival departure track is the one that feeds the ladder. And I made these ladders very long because a lot of my trains are 25 to 50 cars, so I wanted to make sure that I can squeeze one of those in there, even if not fully, at least just onto 2 tracks, so I don't have to break the train up so much. And then the third line here is basically what allows you to, you know, to access this side of the yard with the locomotive facility and all that stuff. So that's why I did that. And even though it might be overkill, I like the way that came out, and it gives you a few more options on the other side as well. This line here is another arrival departure in case these two are clogged up and you need another one. This one's a little shorter, but at least it puts you on the other side of the ladder, which is you know, just another option. So and this one that you see, you know, that's ballasted here, that's the short line that's continuing through. So this is low speed. Is that line is designed for slow speeds, and you know, this way the access road, which is this here, can still have vehicles running through, and you know, you don't have like a train flying by, creating a dangerous situation. So what else? Okay, this track that branches off here acts as 2 things. Number one, it allows you to gain access to the caboose track, which is here. And I could probably get about 5 cabooses in there. Cabooses in there without any problems. And also, it acts as the RIP track, the repair and place track, which has 2 extensions. The one back here, which is where I have my maintenance of way train right now, is for like outdoor, you know, in case you need to work on cars outside. And then this track is for anything that needs to be worked on inside. So, you know, I actually had, this is one of those sheds that Pike Stuff makes. I think it's called Pike Stuff. So it's actually 2 sheds put together. You can probably see you can see the seam if you look closely. Right there. I gotta still patch that up a little bit better. But it does have the, you know, entrance point there and exit point here. And there's a track that actually runs all the way through, and that door opens up. It's automated, so it opens up through a device that I have here hooked up to it with a servo. And that's how you get the door to go up and down. So that's that. Continuing. Oh, by the way, the service road that entered on that side goes through the back of the entire facility, through here. And then it exits, it crosses the arrival departure right there, and then exits right here, and that's where this one branches off, in case you need to get to any points on this side. Okay, moving on. Those 2 tracks right here that branch off the arrival departure with the black ballast are actually rented trackage for the future coal industry, or the coal facility, which is going to be in that crazy corner that I showed you before with all the stuff. So that entire corner, that wedge, is going to be the coal facility. The reason I did that is because I like to run really long unit trains, which I know are not supposed to be switched out. Right? A unit train just goes from point A to point B, and it just gets filled up and goes right back. But you know what I mean. If I want to switch out long coal train lines or you know, blocks, I can leave them here while I'm doing all the work with the coal loading here. So, you know, I know theoretically coal trains that are very long just kind of go through a loading you know, house or building, and as the train's going through, they're loading the coal, and then it just basically exits and keeps going. But I don't have that kind of room to do that, so that's how I'm doing it here on my layout. So again, that's going to be rented trackage. Backing up a little bit, the mains that were coming down from the brewery over there are going to be still double main all the way through. They're going to pass this little, this would be like the back end of a town, a little road there. Just to give a feel of, you know, houses and stuff that would be going that way. I still have to finish the background over here to kind of blend into that. But they come around, and then there's a crossover here, so that in case you need to get to the short line for whatever reason, for the coal facility or whatever it is, or even to shove back into these tracks, you could do it here, and then there's another one right there that you can get into the short line. So I basically have 2 connecting points for all 3 tracks to switch. One's here in this part of the layout, and the other one is on the other side of the layout by the dock. That's where those crossovers are. Okay, this is my industrial area, and I made this, I had this in mind for a while, but I made this so that I would have a little bit of a switching puzzle built into my layout. So, you know, as you enter from this point here, you could either exit again if you need to, or access the actual facility if you go this way. Just a brief overview of what's going on here. It's mostly a paper company. So you got your paper building here, you got your processing building for the paper, you got your wood chips going in and out, you got your wood chip piles, you got your wood chip shed to unload, and you have your tanks and all the stuff you need for that stuff. This is a chemical plant or a chemical building, which theoretically would also have access to the paper plant for whatever chemicals they need. And then you have a furniture company. This is a transfer building, and that's basically it. And then obviously there's all kinds of back and forth to get through all that stuff. So it creates a little bit, you know, I could spend all day here just switching back and forth, just setting up trains, and I can still have my trains running. Which, by the way, I just wanted to make a point that the reason I made the layout this way and not point to point is because a lot of times I'm basically by myself running these trains. And so I wanted to be able to just have things running and not really pay attention or have to worry about them. So that's why I made it that way. And I also like when trains disappear for a while because it gives it a sense of distance. And so that's why I like when they go into like a closet, for example, or if they're on one side of the peninsula and they disappear through the wall, now you don't see the train for a while. And I kind of like, I just always like that. I know some guys like to follow their train the entire time, and I can. I just got to make a little bit of a run, you know, to the other side. But generally speaking, I'd rather not. I'd rather just see it go away, you know, and then see it come back at some point. Unless I'm working on facilities and I'll follow it around and stuff, and I'm, you know, switching out cars and stuff. But if I'm just running trains, that's how I like to do it. Also, I designed the layout so that I can sit here at this point and be able to see the entire layout. So at any point from here, I can see anything happening, with the exception of a few blind, there's like a little blind, you know, spot behind the docks that I just can't, I have the shower in the way there, so I can't get around that one. But I can also see the upper level. It's, you know, everything's from here when I'm by myself is really neat to be able to access. And obviously right behind me is this area that I was just showing you. One last building I forgot to talk about is this one here. Originally this was just supposed to be a way to mask this corner, to kind of like round it out a little bit, so that it wouldn't have like that hard edge when I take photos and make videos. But what ended up happening is it turned out into a really nice thing, with an operating door. That this door goes up and down through here. It's not turned on right now. Well, maybe I'll turn it on real quick. I have a let me just do this real quick. So the door opens up. And it's all scratch built. So you know, I made this all myself. And there's a tunnel in there obviously with a track that feeds into it, and it goes basically the length of this entire wall. So you can get an enormous train in there, and I'm trying to make it like a very, very large plan. So I might add a few more panels here, like maybe 2 or 3 more, almost up to that little hill over there, to give it the feel of this long facility, very, very long facility. And I don't know what it's going to be, whether it's going to be like some kind of thing where it receives metal coil cars, because it's the one thing I've always wanted to have, or it could just be like plastic, you know, pellets or whatever, anything. But the reason I have this light here is because I can't see. I'm basically pushing the cars in blindly. So I have a sensor in the back that when the car passes it, it's an infrared sensor. When the car hits that point, this turns red, so that I know I'm basically at the end. I gave it like half a car of space for like a buffer, so that I can still, you know, get the last car in there or whatever it is that I'm doing, if I'm gonna, you know, push in that many cars. So that was a neat little project that I worked on. Obviously, I'm also, you know, putting lights on these buildings. All these buildings have lights there and so on and so forth. I still haven't done that building, but these have lights already. So that's the industrial building. And there's one more thing I wanted to tell you about, and it slips my mind now. Whatever. Okay, anyways. So that's that. And then, like I said before, once you get into this area here, this will eventually be the coal facility, which would be access through this spur, this turnout right there. So I'm looking forward to doing that, but that looks like it's going to be like the last or one of the last things I do. And then I have no idea where I'm going to put stuff, because that's the only space I have where I can put my materials. While we're here, let me just show you what I did here. Once again, I explained that I'm here by myself more often than not. So I have had small operation sessions, and a couple of guys have come by, but it's not, it's not easy to set up, and it takes a lot of time. And a lot of times I just come up here after work and just kind of, putz around a little bit. And most of the time I'm just working on scenes and things like that while I'm running trains around the layout. I can still work on scenes. But I came up with this because I want to make it almost like a little control dispatching / just let me know where the trains are at whatever points, so that I can switch things out myself. So this is JMRI, and I have it hooked up so that I can see the layout rather than doing it like the traditional way. I mean, I do have it that way. Don't get me wrong, I do have it that way, right here. But that's when I have an operation session and I want to make it more prototypical. So I do have that panel set up. But this is so much easier to see. This is the upper level and this is the lower level. And I can switch any one of the mainline switches from here. This way I can run the train and, not have any worries about having to walk over and switch a turnout manually and stuff like that. I can do everything from right there. Obviously, this is basically block detection, and that was a huge project that I was working on. This video is about all of this on another one of my playlists on how I wired all that stuff up and came up with everything. But let me just show you the panel. This is basically all of my well, mostly it's a block detection, but I do have other little things in there like my Wi-Fi router and my computer interface, things like that. So more about that on my channel if you want to check it out. Okay, and so that puts us back into the last section, would be at least the last section in the lower level, which would be the closet. So the closet tracks basically, I know it's dark in here, but basically run through. There's no like weird turnouts or crossovers or anything. They just run right through and right out. But the nice thing is that I can still get stuff in here. I can still store my drums and stuff, and still use the closet as a closet. So what I might do eventually is just encase this in plexiglass or some kind of a wood box, so that at least maybe the plexiglass will be just on this side, so I can still pop it open if I need to clean and stuff. But when it's closed and there's a coat here, it could still rub up against that and not interfere or knock trains over or anything like that. So, and that's basically it. Now, the next thing is the upper level. So I'm going to start, I guess, on this side. The thing that I had trouble with was that, this upstairs room is so awkwardly shaped because I have so many different angles, with the roof line being like a cape roof line, and then this side is dormered, sort of, but it's still kind of weird. I don't know. There's just a lot of angles, but that's the way that's all I had. So that's what I'm working with. But the problem that I had is, I didn't have a way to turn the train around up here without, like, I could have done it here, but I still needed this ferry system to get the trains up and down, and I didn't want to sacrifice so much room for a helix. I mean, I guess I could have put a helix in here, but it would have taken up this entire corner, and I just did not want to, I'd rather have more layout than to waste, space with helixes. So what I did is I basically fed the track in from the bathroom, which is next door. Obviously, that's why there's a shower There's a shower right here. But that hole is basically the vanity on the other side. And that white thing is the back of the vanity. The good news is that the vanity is there right now. You would never know that there's trains back here. So that entire vanity just literally pops off. I took the screws out so that I could just slide it right off. And then I built a detachable loop back there, like a big one. So that when the train goes in from one track, it does a giant loop and then it comes back out. Now the nice thing is that it takes a while to do that. And by the way, the loop is the top one here. That's the bathroom right there. And then it comes back out. So, you know, the nice thing about it taking a little bit of time is that it doesn't look silly with the train, the end of the train here, and then you see the locomotive coming in on the other side. It looks kind of toyish that way. So the entire train disappears for a little while, and then it comes back out. So it gives a feeling of, like, you know, again, distance. So anyways, let me just take you through this now. This is the most incomplete part, but it is working. Everything's functioning. Sorry about all this mess here. I have all these buildings that I got to work on, but basically this area back here is going to eventually be holding tracks for whatever's coming off the ferry, if it needs to be held there. Not a lot, just a few. What I figure is that the lower port is more busy than the upper port. The upper port is just basically to unload and get things going. But I do have everything running. All these turnouts work. They're wired. Everything's, you know, there's power. Everything's good. The spur's right here for the ferry. And then I do have a crossover here, but it's not. I'm still working on how to figure out the reverse loop, which is, looks like it's not going to be able to be there. So I might have to rip that out and just basically continue the track rather than having a crossover. So these are the two tracks. This is a basic loop in the upper level. One comes this way in front of the panel here, and one goes on the other side to the other side. So let me just take you through this side first, the closer one to me. You know, it comes around, and then basically what I wanted to do was make this, again, the middle of nowhere. So a lot of trees, a lot of shrubbery, a lot of, you know, S-curves, and just trying to get around the mountainside or whatever, the fields. But it's cool because it's kind of paralleling what's going on the bottom here. So it's cool because as the train comes through, I wanted to make it feel like the trees were kind of like wrapped around the train, almost like as a tunnel, as a natural tunnel. And I still have to add more trees, and eventually this is going to be, you know, continued through. So this will all have trees that go around. The only thing I have to be careful with, though, with that is that I still have to be able to clean the track. So I added a flat, almost like a clearing here, so that I can get, you know, a stick with a Bright Boy in there and still clean. And same this way, same way this way. Because I will have more trees that will kind of connect this way as well. So, you know, again, I wanted the train to kind of just go through all that. And then I have like a dried up riverbed here. This is like just mud, which I'm pretty happy with how that came out. And this bridge is just basically clearing that little creek thing. And then I'm working now on this side, which is where we started the entire video on. This will have more trees as well, and back there also. I did paint that background myself, which I was surprised it even came out that good, but I'm happy with it. And the only facility on this side is this building here, which is facility TBD, to be determined. I have no idea what's going to be coming here, but something simple, you know. And I did make it so that it's you have room to switch cars and things like that with 2 tracks. But the upper level is supposed to be a quieter stretch of track. It's not supposed to be so busy with like huge unit trains and things like that. So it's all going to be manifest trains and things like that come through here. Coming around, I have another seam break, but this time I just decided to use trees rather than a mountain. And then as you come around the peninsula here, this is the gravel and cement plant, and the gravel and cement plant. Again, it's not a huge project here. It's not like a major facility, but it's enough to load a few cars. And I always wanted to combine these two buildings. This is the Medusa one, and this is the gravel, glacier gravel, which is the most common one that Walters makes for N-scale. And, you know, basic stuff. I use grout for the covering here, the ground covering, and I did add lights everywhere, so it looks really nice when when we do some night operation here, some night running. But I put lights even up there. It looks really cool at night. So yeah, I wanted to make this a pretty industrial looking facility, you know, with a lot of dust and a lot of kick up, and everything's you know, old and rusty and weathered and whatever. And then as the train continues on the main line here, it's a straight shot, which I wanted to have a straight shot also. I've seen these grain facilities that just have these long straight shots like this, and I wanted to kind of model that, so I did. But this spur here gives you access to both that grain facility, which has long tracks for, you know, long grain trains, and it also has a storage track, which is where those hoppers are right now. But the siding is basically designed to load a grain train. So I can basically take a grain train, sort of unit train, load it up here by running it from, you know, this is the siding, so it connects on that side. So I can just run it through and slowly load or unload, and then run it out, and then eventually get it on the ferry and bring it down, and then, you know, run it down on the lower level and then bring it back up again. But yeah, that's basically the function of that siding. And I'm also using the siding for any trains I need to get out of the way, or also for turning the train around if I can't use the reverse section that I showed you before. So if I need to get the train from one end to the other, I could just leave the cars here, you know, get out, go onto the main line, and go to the other side and hook up there. So that takes me to the last section, which is that turner right there, which is going to come this way, and then there's going to be a facility here that accepts tank cars. This I wanted to make it like, you know, where it's just tank cars. What it's going to be, who knows? Maybe chemical something, or maybe oil something, maybe, I don't know, whatever might accept tank cars. But because this is so detached, like I'm basically sitting, this is the furthest I can get my hand without leaning over. So because this is so detached, what I'm going to have to do is, I left this, you know, I didn't drill this in. I didn't screw this in on purpose, because I wanted to be able to take it off, work on it off the layout, and then just plug it back in. So once I figure out where the track's going to hit on the connection there, then I'll be able to get the rest of it figured out, and then I'll just put it in, screw it down, and it should work. Then obviously any kind of turnouts that are going to be there, I'm going to have to control through some kind of remote, you know, system. So, but it shouldn't be more than like 2 or 3 at most back there. All right, so that takes me to the end of my video. Let me just give you another overview here. The only thing I didn't speak about were these iPads that I have here, but check out my my YouTube video for that, my YouTube channel for that. It explains it. Once again, I apologize for the mess, but it's coming along nicely. I mean, this has only been 2 years of work, and I think it's going pretty fast. And everything's working super smooth. I mean, I'm using quality stuff. I'm using Pico tracks and Pico turnouts. It's all code 55, and it's Electrofrogs on every single turnout. So, you know, every slow moving train that goes through those generally doesn't lose its power as it goes through. So a little bit more work generally for us track work, and then just some scenery, and hopefully this thing will be ready to run like fully with the operations and all that fun stuff. All right, that's my general update for the month of April in 2019. So check out my YouTube videos and see how all this came together. And I'll see you on the next one. All right, take care.